Alrighty, now that you were able to see that clip from your video, there are 2 points that I want us to focus on. First, what is the gap between what you said you want to see and hear in small group, what we saw as proficient for cognitive demand, and what you saw in the clip? What was the gap there for small group?
The gap, I would say, is giving the students more opportunity to guide through the question themselves, like to be the ones that guide me through the question.
So having the students own the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. So the gap is increasing student discourse. We want them to own that cognitive demand. So I want you to think, what are some strategies that we could use, and just to get our mind kind of thinking there, what are some things that we do to get kids talking when it's a whole group? What are some strategies that we might use?
It's just, I guess, the old school ones like think, pair, share.
Think, pair, share, turn and talk. Perfect. And then, I want you to reflect on what you saw in collaborative and independent group. What was the gap that you saw there?
For independent, the need of going through and making sure that the students are doing what they're supposed to on the actual whatever they're supposed to be on, and making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. Just starting with that and then going through, like we discussed, and making sure they're getting through the work and making sure they're doing and showing their work.
Yeah, making sure that students are going through and showing their work and holding them accountable to what you said you want to see and hear there. And what are you thinking that you might be able to do to hold them accountable? What is something you could do?
It's like a chain of effect. If I'm able to get the students in small group to be more the owners of the questions, be more the ones that guide the conversation, that'll give me an opportunity to do the laps and to be able to go through it and hold them accountable.
So what I'm hearing you say is you think you could do aggressive monitoring laps if you got them doing the thinking in the small group. Literally, you were so on it. So, based on what we discussed today, what do you think your action steps should be for small group? Implementing a what?
Implementing, what they call it,
You just gave me some strategies.
implementing a strategy. I forgot the technical name, like the monitoring strategies.
You told me think, pair, share, turn, and talk. For small group, which one do you think?
Think, pair, share. I like it more because then it gives the students a chance to actually think about it and not forcing them to talk and not have anything to say.
So absolutely, in small group, implementing a think, pair, share, and then that allows you in collaborative and independent during the think and pair to do an aggressive monitoring lap, a procedural lap, and then a conceptual lap. So your action step is going to be to implement a think, pair, share with corresponding aggressive monitoring laps. So what is your action step?
Implement a think, pair, share with the corresponding aggressive monitoring lap.
Perfect. Seriously, so good, and I love that you came to that just by analyzing the video. So your action step is the think, pair, share with integrative aggressive monitoring. So let's go over the steps of what that would mean. So that way, we're gonna write that down and then we'll put it in our tracker. The first step would be to give clear and concise directions. For students to think independently in small group. So clear and concise directions for students to think independently in small group. And as you give them think time, you can do a procedural lap to make sure all kids are on task in the collaborative and independent. That first one you wouldn't need the pen, but it's to make sure everyone's set up. We would have been able to get that girl on sooner. You know what I mean? And make sure she's ready to go. Your second step, you'd come back to small group. You give clear and concise directions for students to turn and talk. and agree on an answer. And as students are able to turn and talk and choose an answer, you're going to be able to do a conceptual lap and use our coding system that you've been using aggressive monitoring in small group to provide feedback. And then your third step, sorry, am I going too fast? You good? You got it? Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the
Third step, you're going to check for whole group understanding in small group. And it would be to do a countdown, have students write answers on their whiteboards, and share. Because then, based on what they put on their whiteboards, this will be like our next piece, we'll be able to use that data to determine, do I need to address a misconception? Or do I need to ask higher order thinking questions to expand their thinking? Does that make sense? So go ahead and repeat. We know that we're implementing a think, pair, share with aggressive monitoring. What are your 3 steps that you're going to take to do that?
Sorry, 1 second. Misconception.
I love that you're always thinking of the next step.
My 3 steps would be, first I'll give clear and concise directions for students to think independently in small group, and that will give me the opportunity to do a procedural lab in independent collaborative. Then I will come back to small group to give the students clear and concise directions to turn and talk and agree on an answer. While they're doing that, I will be able to do the conceptual lab while implementing the aggressive monitoring labs. And the third thing I would do is check for whole group answers by giving them opportunity to write their answers on a whiteboard and sharing them, and then from there I'll be able to see like if there's misconceptions I need to address, or push them with my order of thinking.
And I know you're a logistics person, so you like to have those comprehensive steps. So, where would be a good place to implement this in your upcoming lessons? Or actually, really the when? When do you think would be a good place to implement this so that way I could come see it? And then we're gonna get into some practice.
When, like what day?
When do you think next week? Because I know we do blended learning every day. So for me, I know that this works for us every day. When would be a good time for me to come see it?
Next week, Tuesday
Tuesday.
would be fine.
Okay, cool. So what I want us to do now is I want you to take 3 minutes and write your script of what you would do and say for each portion of the think, pair, share. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to go ahead and write down what would you do and say for each portion of the think, pair, share. And remember to focus on the clear and concise, because you know I'm a wordsmith and that's an area of growth for me as well. When we say too much, sometimes it can be confusing. So go ahead and write down what would you do to implement the think, the pair, and the share. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I'm going to go address the students in the hallway real quick while you do that, because I don't like the screaming that I am hearing. another moment. You good?
I think I'm a little
You want?
iffy on the first one.
It's okay. I'm gonna give you one more minute, and then we'll compare to help you kind of ground yourself in that piece. Don't overthink it. And I know you.
No.
Don't overthink it. I know. Don't worry. Remember, think about how could you say what you want to say to set up that expectation in a very short amount of words. One more minute. And I'll model it for you as well.
All three parts, right? Think, pair, share.
As much as you can. The last one should be quick. Give me about 30 more seconds because we're gonna come. Awesome. All right, so now we're gonna compare ours in order to see like what we can pull to make the strongest one. So I'm gonna take yours and you're gonna take